All right, welcome everyone to Authenticity with Alicia, the podcast where we talk about all things burnout, authenticity, the journey of finding our identity, and just some of the barriers that we may experience. I am so excited today to be joined with Lisa Duez. She is a licensed therapist, group practice owner, trainer, speaker, and probably some more hats that we could throw on, lots of titles. So thank you so much, Lisa, for taking time out of your day and being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love authenticity. So I love that title. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, and we've got lots of things to dive into that I'm super excited to finally get to, chat, pick your brain, hear about your perspective. But I was just really impressed by the many titles that you have and you wear lots of hats. And so is that something that you knew you always wanted to do?
Oh my gosh, I think it's so funny because this year, 2023, I've been a more of an entrepreneur therapist. So
Mhm.
previous to this, I was like, I have to get the group practice straight. I want the group practice to be at a certain point, and then I want to stretch my wings. So this year, I've stretched my wings a little bit. I've been on a lot of podcasts, which I love them, and they're really cool. And for some reason, I'm now writing a book, which I never thought I was doing, but here we are. And it's
Yeah.
kind of really cathartic and good. And I think it speaks to maybe kind of what we kind of all need, kind of the reasons kind of sometimes that we get burnt out and things like that. So yeah,
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 that's
here I am.
awesome. So it sounds like, maybe like I think many of us can can kind of relate to that where we go into this helping field thinking, I'm just going to work with clients and this is my role. And then life happens and we learn things, we get to try different things out. It sounds like your journey has led you to getting to be more of this therapreneur and getting to help people in a
Yeah.
very different way. I'm sure you can like reach different people and help them with different things based on these experiences.
Yeah. I've been a therapist for a while. And I guess it's like, um, I guess I have a lot of stories. I don't know. I've worked in a lot of different environments and I didn't do private practice and then a group practice until I was in my early 50s. Um, Grew up my kids, and then I was like, oh, let me just go into business because everybody else is doing it and why not? And if it doesn't work well, I'll just go get a job, but it's worked okay. So yeah, a little different. I admire so much people that are going into entrepreneurship early. I was like, why didn't I think of that when I was working at that community mental health agency? That was crazy, but
Right.
I didn't.
Well, and I feel like, and I don't know if you've noticed maybe changes in the mental health culture over the years, but I feel like there's kind of it was taboo. It was like you were labeled a sellout or you were selfish or
Yeah,
doing it for the wrong reasons. And it's like,
you're not
maybe we
supposed
just,
to make money. Yeah, you're not
uh,
supposed to make money,
yeah. And it's like,
because
wait,
I'm a social worker, so we're not supposed to make money. Definitely
right.
social workers have money trouble.
Yeah. And so it's
I
like,
think it happens in grad school,
yes,
actually.
yes. And like these messages like, oh, we'll get used to, you have to work in community mental health for this many times. You have to pay your dues. Like there are things that our
Pay your
professors
dues.
have actually told us. And then we wonder why people get stuck in community mental health for so long and get burned out or leave the field.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it speaks to like, yes, you can make a good living and still help people. Both can be true. And we never have to change.
When did you
Or we
kind
don't
of
have to choose,
know?
we don't have to choose.
No. When did you
Yeah.
kind of get that realization?
So when I guess I was in solo practice, fun fact, I liked solo practice, but I'm a better group practice person.
Mm-hmm.
I like the community. I like all of the reasons that people do group practices, the community, the collaboration, being able to provide services on a wider scale, being able to teach and train therapists, having supervisees and residents, all of the things, partnership, all of that. So I formed the group practice. I was just going to have a little group practice, actually, just like 3 people, and that totally went out the window. But I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do leadership differently than how I was led. I have to
Mm-hmm.
create the practice that I needed. And I did some work in some practices around here that were great, But, I was thinking about, I can't be another community mental health type leader,
Yeah.
because that won't work. And
Yeah.
I don't want to burn out my staff the way I was burnt out.
Yeah. So kind of
So
using
I
maybe
set
some
out
of
to
the
do things a
things.
little, go ahead. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I think I was just gonna say exactly what you were saying, is like kind of learning from those things that didn't work for you when
Mhm.
you were a staff or an employee, and like being that change, being that effective leader where it's like, hey, we can pour into our job and our clients without having to maybe sacrifice or,
Yeah.
get burned out.
Yeah. We can actually understand as clinicians who we are, and then understand as clinicians how we have to lead, because you have to lead mental health differently
Yeah. So in
because
your
it's not tangible.
so in your
Yeah.
experience, like what does effective leadership look like for the mental health field?
Oh gosh. I think one of the big things is remembering that you're a clinician first.
Mm.
A lot of times I remember times when I was forced to do things or encouraged to do things that were not, um, that were kind of borderline not ethical. And I had to explain to my supervisor that I can't go see this person because you need me to bill a couple more hours. The person doesn't need therapy anymore. They're good. So we can't do something like that. We can't just show up. We can't call them and make them come into the office because they have self-determination. They don't want to come in, they're not coming in. So things like that. I think that somebody has to really understand the mental health field. Somebody has to really understand the emotional toll that, how to support therapists, how to be the therapist, the parallel process of the clinician and how the clinician is in their own space with their own clients, transparency, authenticity, that we show up in the therapy room, and then we have to show up the same way as leaders.
Oh, like the world would be a better
Transparent,
place if we
authentic.
could have all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. That we have to handle our emotions as leaders. We handle our emotions in the therapy room. It has to be a parallel process.
Yes. So why, like, it sounds so simple on paper, right? Where it's like,
Oh,
yes,
yeah, it does.
sign
Oh,
me
yeah, just
up.
do all
That
these
sounds
things.
wonderful. Where do you think it gets lost? Because I know, like, from my own
Yeah,
community mental health experience, I know, like, from colleagues, effective leadership is really hard to find in this field. Like, what goes
yeah.
wrong?
I think some of it is decision making in community mental health, and agencies are done by people that are not clinicians. And I get it. Sometimes you have, government agencies that have to make decisions. You have legislative stuff. I understand all of that,
Yeah.
but the execution part needs to be done by the clinician. Like, hey, you have to do the X, Y, and Z, but let the clinician figure out how to do that
Yeah.
instead of you coming in and saying you got to do it this way. You
Yeah.
know, I think sometimes as far as quantitative stuff, mental health is not like medical stuff where, you put your leg in a cast for 6 weeks and you're better. I can't tell you how long someone's going to need trauma treatment. Years. As long as it took to get traumatic, they're going to need that much time to undo it. So then you got cost. And so I think it's all of that person that understands that. And I think therapists crave authenticity. Just be who you say you're going to be, you know,
For
simple
sure.
but difficult
It
at the
is,
same time.
because yeah, I'm like, you're spot on of like, there are these outside, especially if you're working at like an agency or community mental health, there's these outside forces that are trying to put you guys in these boxes. Like, okay, well, bill these many hours or see them for only 6 weeks. And it's like, we know that that's not possible always, and
Mm-mm,
so it's not
mm-mm.
easy to be that authentic self and to maybe do the modalities that we want to do or the therapy that we want to do that feels good for us, because we're being forced to do, maybe, well, I can only see you for 6 sessions, I'm going to do just like band-aid approaches and then get you on your
Right.
way, and that doesn't make
And
us feel
they
good.
need more.
Yes, and
They
then
need more. Yeah.
we feel like crap and we're like, well, this isn't why I got into this field. And I wonder if that like tears at us and maybe leads to that burnout because we're not being able to be our authentic self or getting that authenticity in that leadership.
Yeah. And then maybe we just, as clinicians, we are overextended. We have caseloads of, I can remember having a caseload of 80 people. How
Ugh.
am I going to fit 80 people into my day?
And
How
be
in one
present for
week?
them. No.
How? And being present for that. And if I
Ugh.
have a cancellation, then put someone else in there. How is that going to happen?
Ugh, that's wild. So
Yeah.
you've been passionate about being that authentic leader and teaching other people how to be authentic leaders and effective leaders, have you seen any shifts then of people who have gotten that effective leadership and
Yeah, I mean,
authentic
definitely we
selves?
have some really good role models in the field now. I think people in private practice, I think there's a lot of group practice owners that get this,
Mm.
you know, that really group practice owners don't necessarily go into it for the money,
Mm.
because it is very expensive to run a group practice. And a lot of times we do it because of the reasons I said. We like
Mhm.
community, we want collaboration, we want to grow clinicians, we want to help the community on a larger scale. And so we decide that, you know, we actually like the supervision and management part of it. And so I think we understand in order to grow healthy clinicians, we have to take a little bit of a step back
Mm.
and figure out ourselves first and how we're going to show up in our own practices. And then, you know, that sets the culture.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And again, it sounds
Yeah.
like so simple, but then it's like, well, there's authenticity is actually kind of really hard to do. And so
Yeah.
like,
It's so funny. I'm writing the authenticity chapter of the book.
yeah.
And it's been hard because it's been hard. So I figured out authenticity. I'm just writing it. I'm doing some research, but there's two components in my view to authenticity. There's
Mhm.
transparency
Mhm.
and there's integrity.
Mm.
Yeah. So like transparency, you know, with yourself and others, and integrity about like showing up as you say you are, you know, who you are. You know, have you ever like, and it's like we have such good spidey senses as therapists because I know that we've all met people that we're like, wait a second, something's off, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm trying to like, how can I be transparent? How can I help people be transparent? You know, obviously, you know, there are parts of businesses that, you know, I believe that roles, you know, take parts of businesses, everybody doesn't need to know about everything, but
Right.
they need to know about some things. And certainly if you're struggling as a leader, it's okay to say it, I think. You know,
Mm.
this job is hard,
Mhm.
because I think a lot of times when leaders don't aren't authentic, aren't transparent, aren't don't function with integrity, they button it up, and that worldview, you know, just like in therapy, that worldview becomes the way they execute their leadership. And if they're angry or if they're anxious, that
Mhm.
shows.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I think like
Yeah.
modeling too, right? Like we don't have to say, hey, we're this far behind, or here's every single detail of why I'm stressed. But if you're modeling, hey, it's okay to say I'm having a hard time right now, or we're kind of in
Mm-hmm.
a wild patch, or I'm having a day, then you're also modeling that your employees can
That
come
you're
to you
human. Yeah.
and then they can say, oh yeah, I'm having a hard time too. And then you guys can
Yeah.
offer the support and figure it out and build on that relationship and get deeper instead of being robots with no emotions and just shoving it aside, and then it comes out when we don't really want it to come out.
Yeah. And it comes out in ways where we're actually causing more burnout,
Yes.
and overworking someone because we feel overworked and we're pressured, so pressure goes down.
Yeah,
um
of course. The
yeah,
integrity piece kind of stood out to me. That's not an
yeah,
aspect that I would have thought of. Like the transparency, like that's my brain can kind of
yeah,
understand that. But that integrity, were you kind of surprised when you were diving into that
yeah,
authenticity
because I think
factor?
integrity to me is, can you be who you say you're going to be? So
Mm.
I was thinking about integrity like, um the social media, the little filters that make me look like I'm 30. I am not 30, okay? But I can put a filter on and make me look like I'm 30.
Uh-huh.
So but when I look at that filter, my nose looks a little too long and my eyes are weird, and it's not me.
Mhm.
So if I can actually like be the who I am, then that always is better for everyone. you know I mean, I'm not against a filter or anything like that. I'm just saying, you know
Maybe like just like a softened version or just
little
like even
soft touch,
yeah,
I
like
get it, but
still
I
be
understand. But then I'm like, wait a minute. So you got to be the same person on the inside and the
mm,
outside. And like I said, I think we have these spidey senses
yeah,
that we understand, especially therapists. We can read people very well,
yeah.
and you can read your leadership. And so you understand, in general, can the same person show up that's, you know, here today, here tomorrow? Are you the same person as you are at home and at your job.
Yeah.
Maybe just a little tweak, but generally, who is that person?
Right. Like get to
Who
your
are you?
core. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That sounds incredibly vulnerable.
yeah. It was hard. I was like, oh my gosh, nobody functions with 100% integrity all the time. I mean,
Right.
it's just, let's be real. But can I, be vulnerable at times and be like, man, like I said, I'm having a hard day, or I'm having a great day, or, things are going well. And to the extent of, what do I as the leader need to carry?
Mm.
Because, I don't want to burden,
Mhm.
but can I, you know, keep what I need to keep, still function on the outside where I create that safety,
Mhm.
um, for my staff or for the staff, any staff. And so they can understand they're in a safe environment and they can then do their job in a safe environment.
Mm. I'm like, can we
So,
just bottle you up and you be like everyone's boss, right? You can manage that load. I'm like, that's safety. Cause
yeah.
that's what I've heard so much about too is, people leave for a lot of reasons, but I think to the core is bad management and they don't feel
Mm-hmm.
safe to be able to, like, no job is perfect. There's going to be stressors at any job, but it's when you don't feel safe or supported by these people in charge. And so I'm just like, we need more leaders like you and who have
Yeah.
this approach to it, because I think it's actually very healing and empowering
Mm-hmm.
for people.
Yeah. And it's healing, I think, for the leader, because they're like, there's not this pressure on me to be this person I'm not. I just get to be me,
Yeah,
you know?
very freeing. Like I don't have to be perfect all the time. I don't have to know all
Right.
the answers. I'm going to be me, and I can be successful still, and I can do a good job. And it's like be this
Yeah.
you can have both of those things.
Yeah. And I can cuss in front of my staff if they think I'm having a bad day. I can be like, F this, man, I'm having a bad day, And they're like, I get ya. You're good.
Yeah. Yes. Like sometimes you just need to say that.
Yeah, because the
Oh,
job is not easy.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, I know it's kind of like a 180 just because I mean, I'm sure we could talk about all this. I know this is something that you're passionate about. I'm passionate about it as well. But one of the things that you also talk about is this care of self versus self-care. And I really wanted to make sure we had
Yeah.
time for it because I think
Oh,
that's going to
yeah.
be really relatable for a lot of people. So, can
Mhm.
you kind of explain what you mean by that?
Okay, so self-care. So I'm what am I? So when I was growing up, I'm Gen Xer. So, self-care is just not a thing.
Yeah.
We just didn't do that part.
Hmm.
We didn't get that. We grew up feral. So then, you start to learn self-care. Oh, what's that? Is that manicures and, going to the coffee shop and, those are those things too. But if I want to have sustainability and prevent burnout, then I actually need to care for myself. And it came out of a little bit of IFS, internal family systems, the whole thing about the self being, if you know it a little bit, there's 8 C's that the self is, there's clarity. I'm not going to know them all right now, but there's clarity, there's collaboration, there's calmness. If you look up IFS, you will know what
Hmm.
I'm, but how can I get to that?
Mm.
How can I be that clarity, calm, cool, collected person?
Yeah.
And that I can there's a concept of self agency where you're kind of, hey, I'm the agency and I'm going to manage my life. And so, yeah, if I need to get a manicure, I'll do it, whatever,
Mhm.
whatever. But also, if I need to schedule my clients differently, or if I need
Mm.
to, whatever, have a different environment in my house if I need to. So it's a little bit deeper than just self care. So I flip it as care of self.
I think like it sounds less guilty, right? Like
Yes.
more manageable. Because I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people who are like self-care. I don't have time for that. That's selfish. I have a
Mhm.
million things to do. I can't do that. But taking care of yourself, or that just care of self, it can be a lot more vague. I tell a lot of my clients sometimes it's getting a glass of water. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
expensive or lavish, but it's just things that you need to nurture yourself. And I think that language change that you use sounds
Yeah.
really
Just a little
freeing for
reframe.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's more about, because you're right, self-care, people will say self-care, shopping, self-care, this. Well, that's like dopamine for a little bit. But it goes away and then you need more dopamine.
Yeah.
And so this is more like, okay, how can I create the life that I need to create? Does that look like me coming into the office, a little bit early to set my day? Does that look like me scheduling myself an actual lunch and having an
Mm,
actual lunch and not doing my notes when I'm doing lunch,
mhm.
which is what we all do.
Right.
Um, whatever that looks like. Does that look like me? Therapists are very, we talk all day and we have to pay attention all day. And we sit. I saw a Facebook post at one point. You sit in your chair, you attune to the person
Mhm.
6 to 7 hours a day. You become, you are attuning, you are thinking, you are reframing. That stuff is hard
Mhm.
on your brain. And so if you need to go home and sit in the bed and look at YouTube for 30 minutes, that's
Yes.
care of self,
Yes.
because you are, that's if you need, don't talk to me till I say so, you
I
know,
love it.
that's like giving you a decompression time. So it's like finding out what you need first and then building that in there.
Oh, I think that is so empowering just because, yeah, and it's like figuring out what you need. So it's not following social media and saying, oh, I saw this checklist, so I have to do this. But it's really looking
Right.
inwards and just seeing, like, well, what's going to make you the best version of you? What do you need to thrive, to keep going? Whether that's scheduling a little bit of a lunch break or mindlessly scrolling Instagram videos like I do
Yeah, because
after
you don't have
work.
to
Like,
think.
that's
Yeah.
okay to do.
Yeah. And I think we very much judge ourselves as to how we take care of ourselves. And I think self-care gets a little bit, hey, it's just a little bit, I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
But care of self, when you think, okay, I'm me, I have a self, I get to figure
Mm,
it out.
care of self. Just, yeah, I want everyone to
Care of
like
self.
write that on a post-it note, put that somewhere. That's a great reminder. What
Yeah.
like tips would you have for someone? Because I mean, I think you said like we still maybe sometimes judge ourselves or we still might have some guilt there. So what are some tips for people to explore that care of self?
Yeah. I think it's kind of finding out what you need. There's a lot of really good, I know I've seen them, you've seen them probably, where they talk about like the life domains. I think I'm obviously
Yeah.
not going to name them all at the same time because I'm not going to remember this, but like, spiritual,
Hmm.
emotional, family, environment, things, those things. Can I look at those categories and see, okay, I want to do more spiritual practices. I need more time with my family. I need, that's care of self, as you take those parts of yourself
Hmm.
and you kind of just adapt them, and they can change at any point, because the good thing about it is you can fix it later. If it's not working, you can, you know I don't know, do whatever you want.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
think like that's exciting and also probably terrifying for some people who are like, I
Yeah.
just want like a list and then I'll do it. And it's like, oh wait, we
Hmm.
kind of have to continually check
You kind of have to
in.
continually check, and you kind of have to really think about it, and sometimes comes you have to come to terms with some things, maybe like, okay, this really isn't working, and this is a conversation I have to have. But if you do it with grace and you have good intention, I think you end up finding that balance that you need.
I think you're right. And I
Yeah,
think it
you
gets easier
do.
over time too, right? Like I'm sure like anything, we're learning new skills, we're practicing new habits. It can be weird and unsettling, but eventually you're gonna probably like automatically schedule a lunch for yourself and be like, oh, I didn't even feel
Yeah.
guilty about that. I just knew I needed a
Yeah.
lunch hour. Or, oh, I know
Yeah,
my
like
brain doesn't
schedule
work.
time to work out. People are always like, well, my big thing was like, oh wait, I can go into the office a half an hour later. Um, that gives me time to work. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. And it
Like, how
seems
did
so
I not
obvious.
know that? You know?
Our brains do wild things sometimes. And
Yeah,
then it's
because my
like,
brain was 8:30, 8:30.
mm-hmm.
Nope, you can go in at 9 o'clock and get a workout in every day.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, yeah. The great thing about being in private practice is that a lot of us are in charge of our schedules,
Mm-hmm.
so we can make it the way we want to make it.
Yeah. And it's like coming back to this authenticity of like really getting to do what works best for you. Like
Yeah,
I always say like it's an amazing thing that there's so many options in a private practice world. And it can also be a little overwhelming. So it's like, oh, I get to pick my hours. I get to pick my caseload. I get to
yeah.
make all
I
these
got overwhelmed with
decisions.
that.
Yeah.
Totally overwhelmed with that. Wait, what do you, I'm my own boss? Wait, what? You know,
Yeah.
I can make my own schedule. So when I first started private practice, way a long time ago, I would like do my community mental health schedule.
Yes.
I was in the office at 8 o'clock.
Oh, I hope you didn't have the
I'm like,
same caseload as
but
community mental health.
why? Yeah, like what am I doing here?
Right.
Like there's not. Then he's just like, wait, okay, wait a minute. I don't have to be here.
No. But it is. It's like these messages that we get in grad school or like the typical 9 to 5, right? We're like, well, everyone else is working 9 to 5. I guess I need to. And it's like
Yeah.
we were
Mm-hmm.
unlearning some of these messages
Mm-hmm.
that we've seen modeled to us or told to us. And it's work to kind of deconstruct these and figure out, well, what do I really need? What do I want to do? It's a
Yeah, and it
journey.
seems so simple, but it's not.
No, no. And I
No,
think that's the point of like, you're writing a book about this because like this seems simple, but it clearly
but it's
isn't,
not. Yeah.
and people are,
Yeah.
I
It's
think
like
we get in our head.
if we actually started to understand how we should lead, we'd have healthier clinicians. And I'm not, I don't know the whole thing, but
Mhm.
I know what works for me and I
Yeah.
know how to and it's more about, the book is more about how do I get my head straight.
Yeah.
It's not really about how do I manage an organization. There's plenty of books on how to be a leader.
Mhm.
This is how does the leader have the internal, what does a leader need internally and a little bit externally to get to the point where um they're okay.
I think that's a gap though, because you're right. Like there's tons of
Mhm.
books about 7 keys to essential leadership or,
Yeah.
random things. But maybe that's a therapist in you is like, well, these things take work, right? We're a
Mhm.
person first, we're a therapist. And so how do we do this effective leadership and be authentic and not get lost in the bottom dollar or still run things, but be a support for people? Like all that takes mental energy and we need to attend to that to be good
Mhm.
leaders.
Yeah, I mean, because it can be draining, and I didn't think, I think I always wanted to be a leader. I've kind of been a little bit obsessed with leadership even when I was a teenager. And I didn't even know I was going to go in the mental health field at that point. I was just like, oh, this is kind of cool. So what I found out when I think I got my first job as a manager, and it wasn't even in the mental health field, we work harder than anyone else.
Yeah.
I ended up, I think it was at like I don't remember where I worked. I worked at Kmart, but yeah, I worked harder than everyone else. Had to cover the shifts, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wait a second, this is not all it's cracked up to be.
No, well, there's more responsibility, more
Yeah.
liability. And I'm thinking in like the mental health field, that liability can be
It's
pretty
very high. Yeah.
intense. It's you
Yeah.
are responsible for other people's licenses, other people's clients, and that can have a weight on you. It's very rewarding, I'm sure. But there's also this, piece that we need to attend to. And if we don't, I'm sure that's how people get burned out or they're not being authentic or they're building up some of
Mhm.
those emotions. And we can see maybe some of those bad leaders.
Yeah. So we have to free up our headspace first so that we can understand what we need to do.
Heck yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I am so excited for your book to come out. I'm going to be
I am too. I'm
posting
gonna write it.
your website and your socials. People can follow along and grab that when
Yeah.
it comes out. And just follow along for other adventures because you've, like we talked about earlier, you've got many hats. I always end with this question of how are you being or trying to be authentic this week?
This week, huh? I think I'm working on my boundaries a little bit more. Have a lot of irons. The holidays are bad. There's just so
Yes.
much to do, and everybody seems to get a little bit like, everybody's great, but everybody's just a little bit, there's just a lot. There's a lot of, so I'm just trying to so there's been a lot of shifts like, oh no, you got to have this meeting and this
Mhm.
one, and no, it's at this time. And I'm just like, wait, I cannot do this. So that's what I've been doing this week is like, okay, what can I do? Because the holiday, everybody is excited,
Yes. Well, that's a great
I guess.
reminder though, because like we've talked about, this journey of authenticity and even boundaries. I know it's something we didn't really talk about, but they change, they adjust and they adapt. And
Hmm.
so like this is a busy season for a lot of people, which means that authenticity, those boundaries, we kind of need to examine them and figure stuff out. And there's just so much change. So yeah, that's I
Yeah.
think a very relatable place that a lot of people can
Yeah. And
get
I think
to.
we just assume, oh, it's fun, so I get to do it. Now with this, but it's like, wait a second, I have no gas on the tank. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, good luck with this busy season. Thank you so much for joining
Thank you.
us today.
Yeah. Yeah,
Follow along
I
with
appreciate you
Lisa.
having me.
Yes, this was great. I will be posting Lisa's info, so make sure to just go follow her and check out all the great stuff she offers. As a reminder, just take care of yourselves and just keep on this journey of authenticity. And we hope to see you next week when we're joined by more people. Thank you and take care.